I'll invite Chris Turner to the stage as well. I'm very grateful, Sam, that you did manage to arrive in London to be with us today. I have to confess, I have a very bad habit of not taking phone calls that I don't recognise on the caller ID. But after hearing your succession of fantastic phone calls, I'm thinking of revoking that strategy. I think you clearly have a better way.
Yeah.
Fantastic to have Chris Turner with us as well, both co-founders of KulaDAO. It does beg the question, how does a physicist by background and an international development expert come together around a project like this?
So my background's in international development and worked for UN agencies out in Asia for a good 20 or so years whilst being a missionary. So it's kind of like one side missions work, other side actually working to pay the kids' school fees in UN bodies. And really over many years and different projects, seeing a lot of waste, and it culminated for me in about 2011. I was part of a $2.5 billion assessment on a project out in East Asia, and as we assessed it, at the grassroots, only $300,000 had actually gone to interventions, and that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. It's like this doesn't work, and there's got to be a way that we can find a solution for this problem, right? And from that missional kind of perspective of like, how do we solve this problem? Because there's got to be a solution. And I'd been interested in blockchain. I went off to a conference, and through a series of just connections, it's like, okay, this is actually a technology that can start to solve this problem. I wrote the first version of what KulaDAO became, and ended up talking to our third co-founder and built that relationship with him. And he's like, yeah, this is a good idea. I want to put some money into it. And he and Sam knew each other from their hometown in the States, and that's really where we met. Was where I met Sam, and I think I'm coming at this from a lot more philosophical and perspective of, at the end of the day, a lot of what we're talking about rests on capital allocation, and we live in a world where just shy of 1 billion people still live on bare minimum, just over $1 a day. Take that up to $2, it goes up to 2-3 billion, right? And so what we're talking about is future hope and good news is actually tyranny for them. And how do we start to solve and think about those problems with emerging technology? So I've got all the ideas, but I think one of the beautiful things of working with Sam is just the strategic thinking and the technical expertise and background that's kind of married together, which makes, I think, as a really strong team, and how we've built this protocol and this approach. So yeah, we've had quite a ride in 3 years, and it's been really wonderful to see where it's got to.
And Sam, how has your unique background flowed into the work that you do with KulaDAO?
Yeah, so I was in astrophysics, and I was like building these little tubes. I'll skip the term there, to look at the supernova. And so whenever there's supernova, you'll see the signal that goes in there, like that. So we have thousands of those and put them out in outbacks of Australia because there's less light pollution when we look at the sky. But there are times the monkey will touch it. So they also make this little thing. So how do you know then if it's a supernova or it's a monkey, right? So that was my job to figure that out. Anyway, so I designed this algorithm that could kind of tell, statistically significant, tell which is which. Turns out that's very useful for a hedge fund, where if something, if it's like a real thing for a corporate event, or if it's like a noise. So for the physicist sitting there, you still have hope. So anyway, so then I was giving a talk kind of like this, and then got recruited by a university in the U.S. To head over a lab doing like AI, blockchain, XR, robotics, quantum computing. So first line of code for KulaDAO was actually written by my lab. So that's how I got introduced.
So if you've ever wondered about what the link between a supernova is and a monkey, we've established that link
I have
today.
Some expertise.
Yeah. You did a very good job of breaking our minds, unpacking some of the tech stack, and introducing what is unique in the model around KulaDAO. And we promise to rebuild those pieces at a slower pace in our conversation today. I want to ask you, what was it that captured your imagination around the technology, let's talk particularly around the blockchain, that enabled you to think about solving a problem that you saw as persistent in the world that could be solved in a new and different way?
Maybe I can start on that, because I think for the blockchain industry for the past few years, we've seen over and over again a bunch of like pump and dumps, right? And meme coins and things that really don't mean anything. So I thought we need a use case where we can really apply that technology, like to really take advantage of it. One place is really some place I might need transparency, need immutability, and where is that? So developing nation really come to mind. It's by definition a lot of these underground asset, people don't invest in them because it's opaque. So I thought maybe it'll be great to have a blockchain apply to that. So I just want to take advantage of it, but more so the convergence of all the emerging tech come into play. So our patents really have to do with these convergence. So that's also something that I was inspired by. And it's really Chris here that's bringing in the impact side of things. So maybe you can talk about that.
And it is really disheartening, right? If we could really get into the guts and we had time to talk about it at I'll just go at an abstractive level. A lot of our tax dollars or pounds go into international development pots, and again a lot of that gets wasted. And it's not just in that sector; it's in infrastructure and integration at economic levels across these countries. And it's disheartening when you're seeing all the promises made and all of the right buzzwords are included: participation and let's get the communities involved, and yet actually specifically there's actually even strategies that are deployed that provide this harmony in particular regions so that communities don't play well with each other. And meanwhile, all the extractions going on, that power our cell phones and our fancy new cars and all these things that we depend on, and that's just plain wrong, right? It's just it is the way it is, and we don't necessarily know about it. And even the entire development sector in some ways is incentivized to perpetuate itself because it's like any other industry, right? So how then do you start to create systems and ways for communities to genuinely have participation, not in word only, but actually in a protected place? And I think for me, looking at actually really understanding, okay, you've got this idea of a decentralized autonomous organization, which we're both in agreement about. It's neither decentralized nor is it autonomous, because people still have to give an account and there's decisions that have to be made that regulators can hold you to account for. But at the end of the day, how do you protect people's right to choose, which I think is a fundamental God-given right? It's like, here are the guardrails, but what do you choose, life or death? That's really the mandate that God gave to us from day one. Here's a tree, eat, don't eat, make your choice. So any technology that removes that right from an individual, or any space or any process that removes that right from an individual or a group or a community, is fundamentally not moving towards God, in my opinion. One of the things I love about the idea of this whole thing of a decentralized organization that uses smart contracts is once those contracts are deployed, finances are locked. So if people engage and make decisions and their interests are aligned, then those smart contracts unlock the financing and people are protected. And so people's choice and their decision making becomes actually very, very important and powerful to that overall process. And for me, that was like, that's compelling. And I remember I sat out in a conference like this in Bangkok, and this guy was on stage talking about it. I was like, that's the way that we can do this. And I remember leaving that conference and writing furiously on the plane home that evening, realizing, okay, there is actually a way that we can potentially solve for this problem. And I think for me personally, my own journey, it's like, it's been said here this morning at some point, as believers, this is where we need to be on the bleeding edge of these processes, gaining authority, entering into these spaces and actually being light, right? And being the voice of the Lord in these places and not catching up 10 years after the fact, trying to have influence and impact, but having no authority because we were late to the party, because the systems have already been structured. And I think one of the things we've worked hard at and we've wrestled at in this last 3 years, it's kind of like eating glass and then drowning on blood, and people saying you're drowning on blood. It's like, yeah, I know it hurts, but we've had to get into the guts of regulatory process and understanding these things and actually providing a protocol and building a system that actually we might actually pull it off. And I think there's been points on the way it's like, we're really going to make it, and we're kind of at that process now. It's like, yeah, we're going to make it, and that's not because we're great or brilliant. It's just because we've been persistently sticking in there to see something that can change and actually bring hope to communities and people around the planet as we take it to scale.
Yeah, you are genuinely pioneers in this space, and not only embracing emerging technologies, but you're also beginning to define the new ways in which it can be applied in real-world circumstances. You touched on, in your explanation a moment ago, this idea of co-creation or collaboration with the network of parties that are interested, which is central to this theme. We're talking about co-creating the future. I wonder if you could sort of unpack, assuming the benefits of the technology, but bring us down to a ground level, human level, bearing in mind especially the unique nature that you're tokenizing real world assets that have real world impact on communities. Do you have some stories to share or illustrative examples of how that works in practice?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, many. I think we started, thought we're going to build this protocol and convince people to give us some money and then launch, right? And then start investing in these projects, and pretty quickly realized without any proof, no one was going to give us any money. Mm-hmm. So we put some money into a project in Zambia, and it's been really rewarding, where this community, because of choices that they've now got, they voted for $1 a day increase on their salaries, which is like all of you guys getting a 50% pay rise in your annual paycheck. It's huge, right? And so now there's extra capital in their pockets, and so there's micro businesses emerging. We dug a well in the community. There's water for the first time. They're growing tomatoes rather than importing them in, and this whole valley is starting to experience microeconomic development and choice. And there's this one lady, and I sat with her, and we've all got our hopes and dreams, right? You woke up this morning, you believe for a future of something different. All of us have that. And I remember asking her, what do you dream of for your future? And she said, I just dream for a road. It's like, okay, that's different. And it's like, well, why? Because my kids walk 3 hours to school, because there's no road, because the road's so bad, so there's no bus. And I would love to have more time with my kids, so they're not coming home at 9, 10 o'clock, and I get half an hour with them before they collapse because they're exhausted. That's hope, right? So, in the next 2 or 3 years, there's a whole new road going into that community, which means there'll be there'll be capitalization for a bus. And it's not us doing it, it's the community itself making choices because they've been given the economic capacity through the equity sharing of the 20%. We're not controlling that, right? And that's the kind of the difference on those international development and structural development models that prescribe the intervention, even while saying it's community choice. That would be one example to make it really concrete.
It's wonderful. You're both Christians. You're engaged with the missions and ministry world in your own ways, while staying focused on the problems that you're seeking to solve. Speak to us as a community to help us see, in addition to what you're doing specifically through KulaDAO, what are some of those underlying concepts and principles that you see could be applied in the missions and ministry world? What could we take hold of from learning from what you do in your context that could be applied to the missions and ministry world?
Maybe I can start off with one is, maybe I'll go back to the Zambia story real quick. Is when we were invited to give a workshop of DAO, what does it mean? I went in there thinking like I'm almost like sent by God to here enlighten everybody, about the DAO. But I really believed our token buyers will be probably North American or Asian. But in the middle of this, and then this Zambian lady stood up and said, like, I will be the first to buy your token because I now get to invest in my own country, but you are vetting those projects for me. And I feel like if we were to apply the DAO to the Christian community, it's almost like the same thing where, like, we eat our own dog food, right? Because what we preach out, what we bite into, what we share the interest, among us is really come back, should be benefiting ourselves. And of course, we're out there reaching, unreached people group, but we shouldn't be preaching some stuff or like trying to, influence other people, like, and not realizing there's this future consequence out there that is super, like, truly beneficial to us all. And that is something I think that perhaps the DAO ecosystem or something is something that we can provide. And another thing is, because we are doing impact investment all over the planet, we are seeing lots of these projects have the same problem over and over again, from due diligence all the way to, you know, how do we count revenue, how do we count profit, you know, what's the on-ramp, off-ramp from crypto to fiat. But because it's DAO ecosystem, we have this track record of proposals and everything that's on-chain, which later we can apply AI model to and learn from. And I feel like for collaboration across like churches across the globe, you know, I was truly blessed by CW3 community, for example, all over the world. We have prayer, you know, times every Monday morning in Asia. And all that learning, I really wish could be captured and later be shared. Just like all the regional DAOs, you know, at some point, then we can pass the knowledge on. So that's one hope that I have.
Wonderful. Chris, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, really quickly. We need to work at building authority in the places we feel called to. And I think that this last year we have, and I've been kind of the point of it, but we've all learnt it. How do we enter this space and get regulation has been a journey. And from the outside looking in, it's like, well, that's just a mountain I don't know how to climb, but we've climbed the mountain and it's been really hard. But in order to be taken seriously in the marketplace, you've got to climb those mountains. You've got to get up the hill, and then you have authority to speak and have influence in that space. But I long for us as believers to pay the price and gain authority in the places and spaces that we're called to step. And again, I think the CW3 community that we're a part of, and some of us in the room, and communities like this, right? That's where we encourage each other and hold each other and support each other to get up those difficult mountains into places and spaces that we can see breakthrough and influence in the world, because we're trying to bring change, right, and hope in the places and spaces that we're called to.
That's wonderful. We're all pioneering in our own respective spaces, different technologies, mission fields, and so forth. Really inspired by the stories that you've shared today. Chris and Sam, thank you so much. I want to bless you and thank you, and just wish you all the best in the pioneering work that you're doing. Thank you very much.